It's Wednesday, March the 30th. Lake level's about 914 3/4, and it's actually came up about 4 inches just from this morning. Now we've had about 2 to 3 inches of rain in the last 12 hours. So, the lake's going to come up. I don't know how much, but the water temperature, it's been hovering right around 50. You'll find anything from 47 to 51 to 53 degrees, just depends where you're at. But instead of talking a lot about what I've done in the past week, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think is going to happen. We don't know how much the water is going to come up. I actually got canceled today because of the weather, and I went into Bass Pro Shop and worked at the fishing fair in there. And on the way home, I come across the James River, and it was running really good, and it was starting to get muddy, up there around Ozark. And then I also came across the James River in Galena, and the water still looked, real good shape, nice, pretty green color, but it was higher, and was starting to run. So, it depends how much the lake comes up. A person's going to have to figure out if it comes up 2 or 3 feet, there ought to be some fish that will go to the bushes where you can catch them on a jig, maybe a spinnerbait and a chatterbait. If you was fishing today would have been like the perfect storm. I talked about it a few weeks ago before we had a little rain, but we had a big enough rain last night and throughout the day today that in that ground, it was 50 something degrees this morning. So that water that come into the creeks in the pockets today had to be considerably warmer than the water in the lake. And I guarantee you somewhere there was some really good fish biting in the backs of the pockets where that runoff was coming in. A good bait to throw, been a big bladed spinnerbait, maybe a chatterbait or even a jig. Now that's probably the first thing I'm going to try in the morning, but I don't know, midday today, the bottom's falling out of the temperature and it's going to get cold tonight. So a lot of that water that's coming in is probably not going to be near as warm coming into the pockets. But it's something that I'm going to have to try, see what the water temperature is back there, see if there's any activity. But a lot of the fish I've been catching, there's so many different ways to catch them. How I've been catching most of my quality fish is on a crankbait, on a rock crawler. And I've been throwing, several different colors. I know I've been pushing anything with red, the red craws, the mud bugs. But when I was in the fishing fair today, I was hanging out with my buddy Mike McClellan for a little bit, he's the guy that actually designed the rock crawler. And, a lot of times the louder colors, sometimes I think they're more for stained water. But after talking with Mike, he's been home the last week or so, and he's been fishing quite a bit. And he's been fishing these ones down lake in the clear water, and it's a spring craw and then a burnt orange. And he said he's been killing them down there in the clear water. See, now normally I would think that these would be better in off-stained water. Well, shows what I know. Sometimes we try to overthink it. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is keep your mind open. Don't get locked in on a certain color. Like I've kind of been locked in on the darker reds. But Mike kind of opened up my eyes today and showed me several of the pictures that he'd been catching, the smallmouths, Kentuckys, and largemouths. And his boy Justin been doing quite a little bit of fishing. They actually been fishing some tournaments together. But, kind of said the same thing in the Kimberling area, State Park, and the dam. But now we're going to have to figure out, depends how much the lake comes up. There's a lot of fish in the creeks. Now I've been catching my crankbait fish on the main lake and almost as far back in the creeks as you can go. Depends on, how much water comes up and how fast the fish move with it. The person's going to have to figure out, did they stay at the old bank line or are they moving up with the water? I think a lot of that will depend on the temperature outside. It's going to be cold in the morning, but it looks like the next few days are going to warm up. So I would suspect with the warmer temperatures, them fish should move right up into that new cover. And like I say, there's a lot of fish in the creeks, but there's also a lot of fish that have been out in the deeper water that haven't made it to the bank or the shoreline yet, and they're coming. I mean, you can still see a lot of the bait fish out in the open water. There's a lot of gulls and loons out there, and there's fish underneath them shad out there pretty deep. Now they should be coming up, a little higher in the water column where you catch them on Alabama rigs, some jerk baits. But like I say, the most consistent thing for me has been in the creeks, and I think these are more what you'd call resident fish that live there all year round, and they're making their move into the spawning areas. A couple weeks ago, there was actually some fish, a lot of males starting to move up making beds, but then naturally it got colder again and the fish pulled back. So I mean, they're ready to come up and start bedding. It just needs to get a few degrees warmer. So there's kind of two different deals of fish. I mean, you can look for them out on the main lake for ones that have come in, or you can look in the creeks and try to find some, that are moving up the feed. Now you can catch them on a shaky head or a jig. Sometimes I have a little bit of a problem slowing down when I think I can catch them on a reaction bait. But a lot of days that doesn't always happen. And the majority of the fish we've been catching, we haven't been catching very many short fish. I mean, right now the lake, it's in as good a shape as I've seen it in a long time. There are so many 3 to 4 pound fish that are up and biting. Sometimes you may have to go an hour or two between bites, but the quality is definitely there. But I have found, especially up in the river arms where the water is a little bit warmer, there's a lot more males, that have moved up. And, a good way to catch them is something you don't hear about a whole lot, but used to be that's all we threw was a little split shot rig. And it still works, everybody just got away from throwing it. We went to throwing Ned rigs, small jigs, shaky heads. But in the early spring like this is a really good bait. You can cover quite a little bit of water, and I usually fish it out to about, 10 to 12 feet. If I get much deeper than that, I'll rig up a Carolina rig. But where I'm going to look is any place I think the fish are going to spawn. I'll look in them pockets and just start working my way back out to some of the points. And even in the deeper pockets, just move back out a little bit to that 10 to 12 feet. But I usually just take like a number 3 split shot, which is about 3/16 to a 1/4 ounce, one offset worm hook, and it's real hard to beat a Zoom French fry or centipede or a fish doctor. Water's got a little stain in it. Watermelon red will work real good if it's fairly clear. Green pumpkin. And in years before we threw this, all we threw was a little Gitsit, which I'm sure will still work as a tube will. But that's a good way to get you can catch big fish on these as well. I've caught a lot of 4 or 5 pound fish on these little split shot rigs, and I usually fish it on 6 or 8 pound line on a spinning rod. I've got a new a Halo 610 medium action rod. Really liking it, really sweet rod. And I've been starting to use more and more of the Halo rods, which around here you can get them at Bait Works in Springfield. Extreme Outdoors also carries them, but if you're in the market for rods, you need to check them out. They're really reasonably priced, and I've had really good luck with them. Now another bait, we throw a lot in the springtime, and you can cover quite a little bit of water. With the split shot, you got to fish it really slow. As same way thing if you're throwing a little finesse jig or something. But a lot of times this time of year, I'll fish a swing head with either like a Strike King menace, or this is a big bite kamikaze craw. Another bait that'll work is a Zoom speed craw. But I usually throw a 1/2 ounce or 5/8 ounce, and I'll throw it in shallow water. I'll throw it kind of the same areas I'm throwing a crankbait, and I'll almost fish it like a crankbait. I'll keep it in contact with the bottom and just keep it moving real slow. A lot of times when it won't hit the reaction bait, the crankbait moving a little too fast, it's a good way to catch them on this rig here. And usually throw it on like 12 pound line. But, there's just a lot of different ways to catch them. One thing about the crankbait and anything that you're fishing on the bottom right now, some banks have got some of that slime on it, that algae. You might fish one stretch, move across the creek, and it won't have any, or vice versa. You'll have one bank that's clean, one that's real messy. Well, I don't think the fish bite the bait when all that, I call it salad, all that slime gets all over the bait. But if you're in an area where you feel like there's some fish, but you're having too much trouble with the slime, what you can do is take and rig up a drop shot and use the same hook that I've got on the split shot, but use a drop shot with about an 18-inch leader, and the weight will pick up the slime and stuff, but that way there you can keep your worm off the bottom, you know, and keep it slime free. So that's a good way to, you know, kind of get around that problem some. But, you know, I don't know how much the lake is going to come up. I think the rain is pretty well done with. It looks like we're going to get back into a warming trend. But I just keep an open mind. You know, this lake is famous for what worked yesterday isn't going to work tomorrow. You know, so just keep an open mind and change up. And with the changing water, that's also going to change things. How fast it comes up, how fast the fish move with it, and also the staying in the water. I mean, another bait I'm going to have tied on in the morning is like a jackhammer chatterbait. The one I like to throw is the original one. It's got a little bit smaller hook. Depending on the watercolor, I'll either throw a chartreuse and white with a little 3.3 big bite pro swimmer for a trailer, or I'll go to a green pumpkin color and use a twin tail trailer, trying to imitate a crawdad. And I'll try that in that runoff and also around a lot of that new submerged brush. So I know there's a couple big tournaments this weekend. Probably going to be busy out there. I want to wish everybody good luck, and until next week, good luck, good fishing.